Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and today I have a spring/nature themed episode this time. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe to be notified when future episodes are released, and show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. What a crazy week we've had so far. Just a few hours ago, Jersey had a 4.8 or so earthquake. I was currently working from home, and it's not my first time with dealing with an earthquake. We've had them here in the past. I think natural weather events like this just give us perspective, leaves us pretty humbling. We've had pretty intense rainstorms and floods, not as terrible as other parts of the world, but there's still damage and a lot of worry, a lot of property and stuff like that. Things get damaged, people get hurt. That's terrible. So we also have that eclipse coming up, and as a Lovecraft fan, I just can't help but connect the earthquake and the eclipse to some weird cosmic nonsense. So, what I've been up to this past week, well, I've nearly finished Dragon Dogma 2. I've just entered the unmoored endgame world, which is pretty crazy. I enjoy when RPGs do that with the whole world state dynamic changing. That's always pretty fun. Final Fantasy 15 had that to some extent. The enemies just kind of got harder, but like the world didn't change. Like there's no flooding or seas opening up or big canyons or craters or anything like that. Stuff like that's always really cool, especially in video games. It's cool to see like past areas just change in some way when you come back to them. I haven't explored much of the unmoored world, but I did wake up my pawn. They're like knocked out by the end of that whole sequence, so you have to go find them, which is kind of cool. And I destroyed one of those glass dragon statues, so that's on the agenda now, doing all those. I'm about a level 57 magic archer. I think it's about time I max out warrior and the fighter vocations now before I finish the game overall. The giant Roman statue fight was really cool. Fighting in the canyons for that boss fight made it extremely engaging. Picking elevation or the way you would fight it, you can climb it obviously, but I was the magic archer at the time, so using all those arrows really helped. Really helped. That was pretty nice actually. I wish it had more attacks though, like against your party. It doesn't really do a whole lot overall. I don't know if that changes with the unmoored stuff, but we'll find out. Yeah, I think I've had my fill of Dragon's Dogma though. If there's ever DLC, I'll definitely try and grab it at some point. But I think I'm at a good spot. I'll see what else the unmoored area has to do or offer me, and then we'll move on to something else. Probably like Chrono Trigger. I've been thinking of playing that soon. This will be my first playthrough of it on a more like modern version of the game. I'll be playing on an emulator. I got it downloaded for a DS emulator version, so I'm gonna be hoping playing through that. And I still have my original Famicom version. Bought that at Retro Classics. That's in Somerville, New Jersey, which is pretty cool. Got that around high school, and this will be my second time playing Chrono Trigger, and I'm excited to go back and experience it, man. It's nice, especially with Akira passing a few weeks ago. That's definitely what fuels going through all these old Akira stuff. So I never really do themed episodes for this podcast, and I was always trying to think of new things to just try and see what kind of sticks around here, or anything like that. So this episode I kind of want to dedicate to just the season itself, spring and nature and all that, just because there's a lot of things that are going on in the world, and I think that you know New Year's was just a few months ago, and spring is also like the time of growth and change and life, all that. So I think that sometimes we just need to bring us down a few levels, and just be a little more engaged with nature and think about what we're leaving behind and all that. So I read a book called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, and that was mostly fueled by its presence in the Three Body Problem, where it's referenced as like a big scientific movement book for back there. It was banned, I believe. I'm not really certain on the history. I'm not really doing my research for that. But in the book, it kind of gives that feeling that the book itself was kind of promoting like capitalism or something like that. But the book itself is entirely about our impact on the world. Not just not just pollution, but the things that we are using in the daily lives that might be changing the world, like pesticides or aerosols and all these kind of man-made or maybe things found in nature that we modify or rechange, just like we do for stuff using like chemicals in world wars and for medicines and things like that. All these kinds of things that could be poisons to our life are poisons to all life on the planet. They just genuinely are. Different doses affect different species, different creatures differently. I'm not really going to go into full specifics on that, but it's just how the world is. You don't spray, aerosols or your Windex or bleach near pets or kids, and you shouldn't do that near like your plant life or other animals. And there's a lot of better examples in the book itself. Rachel Carson wrote this book. It came out around the 60s, and it's a much more older publication, but it impacted the scientific world so heavily. And I just wanted to at least experience what it was like reading it. And it's a much more heavy-sided book on the scientific side, but it offers a lot of um, really like easy to understand examples, like real world examples for just, you know, understanding how things affect the world. And all that's pretty great. I loved the entire thing, and it made me, think that we don't we shouldn't be using a lot of these things as common. And back then they did. They used them in a lot wider variety because there wasn't much government oversight. And they talk about that here, and this book kind of propelled or influenced that big change. And I'm certain that there's big um, ways you can affect and impact that now. But this book was pretty cool. And I think that, people writing books like these environmental science books that, in at least in this country, we can freely publish these things. That's pretty nice. The freedom of speech and the way to, do your own research and at least, put out stuff that can change the government and the policies and the way that the scientific world and all that works. I think that's pretty important in a world where it's like it's uncertain where we're going. It's very uncertain. So shout out to Rachel Clutchin. She influenced the scientific and the modern world in ways that we really wouldn't know. And to scientists still doing all that work, that's pretty great. Um, so yeah, read that book. Read that. Now, I have a much more interesting book to talk about that I read. This came out in the 1960s by Brian Aldiss, and it's called Hothouse. Now, this is a pretty crazy book. In the premise of it, a the Earth stops revolving around the sun, and only one side gets like sunlight, and the other side doesn't get any. It's total darkness on one side of Earth. This causes all the plant life to adapt severely heavily and become these giant monsters, like giant birds, other giant animals. Like humans are reduced to the size of like ticks. Like ticks are the same size as humans now, that kind of thing. And humans are just eaten constantly. Like they're barely in the book, to be honest, almost barely. And they all kinds of animal life on that side of the planet just mutates, and humanity is pretty much almost extinct. So you follow like these pretty much cavemen like people. They're very instinctual to some extent. You still get some like a lot of personality from them, but they're still very down to their base instincts to some degree. And you have them go around this terrible world, and they get eaten all the time. At some point, they get on the back of like these giant spiders, and they go to the moon through these webs. The moon is connected to the Earth by webs. That's pretty cool. And I thought that was just pretty cool science fiction, in my opinion. A lot of the characters are pretty cool. Lilio, Polly, I liked Gren and the moral. They were cool. And there's just really great moments in that book. I think it'd be cool to see this as a video game, with being a person and then all the plant life and all the creatures are trying to eat you and you gotta, try to get to the moon or something. I think that'd be pretty tight. Maybe like a multiplayer game or a single player game, whatever. Anything. Bring that back. Go back to 1960s and bring this book back into the modern day. That'd be pretty nice. And to get back onto the man-eating plant stuff, I've love manga, and I've been reading this manga called Wild Strawberry off and on as it comes out, and I just caught up to it, so I thought talking about it this time in a little more depth would be pretty cool for the spring themed episode. Wild Strawberry, humans get this like this infection that causes them to turn into giant plant monsters, and you follow this brother sister duo for a while as they live in this world. sadly, one of those characters becomes infected by what's known as the Jinka, the monster infection, and then you have to follow them as they deal with that. And it starts leading to some pretty cool fights, some really cool like monster designs. I got some pictures here. I might show them up once I get them onto the podcast here, so you just can see. Cause I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty tight, and I'm excited to see what it would look like in animated form. All the cool monster designs, seeing all that green and foliage everywhere. So yeah, today's just a really cool, spring, flower themed episode to some extent. You know, Silent Spring, Hothouse, Wild Strawberry. I think these were all pretty great to read around this time. And as a manga fan, I'm just excited to see where Wild Strawberry goes. There's not a whole lot, it's anime. They kind of all follow the same tropes, but it's more about that surprise. The latest chapter, chapter 19, kind of has them teasing like some issue with like the government. Obviously, there's always like that kind of thing. So go read Wild Strawberry if you don't want any spoilers or you want to be ready for when the anime comes out, just like me. And maybe we can start talking about some other manga. I've caught up on My Hero, Deku, beating Shigaraki. That might have happened. If you're not caught up, you're not caught up. But he's been fighting him for a while. That's not really a thing now, but it might be over. It might actually be over with the Shigaraki fight. But they're teasing a little more with One for All and all that. I'm pretty excited. And they've just put all of My Hero out on Netflix, so I might try and go rewatch all of that, catch up on see what season 7 was like. I started like season 6 and I just haven't really finished it. So My Hero's pretty cool. I've I've also started a manga called Kaiju number 8, just a little bit. I'm not really all the way in. I know there's like 120 chapters or more, but I'm only like on number 3 or 4. It's about this like dude who cleans up like after kaiju fights, and they like he gets some kaiju powers from all that. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm not the biggest like giant monster fan. I like giant bugs. That's like my thing. I like giant bug like creatures, like giant apes or giant lizards is really, my thing. But I'm still excited to see where this goes in terms of the anime. I think the designs might be pretty cool. I think there's an anime for it. I'm not really sure, but there's that in terms of manga. I'm also reading Dragon Ball. I'm on volume 11 of Dragon Ball. This is where they're going to the second Tenkaichi Budokai, which is pretty cool. We get they have like a time skip instead of the Budokai Tenkaichi being every 5 years. They reduce it to 3 because of all the new participants that they want. So Goku and everybody goes off the train for 3 years, and they don't look any different, not particularly. Goku, in the manga, at least my version here, Goku says he's like 14, and he doesn't look any different. So he's like 17 now, and this is the second Tenkaichi Budokai, and I don't know. I've looked at the wiki. That's just what I have in terms of my English print version. I'm not really gonna nitpick the lore. It's translated from like the 80s, but I'm still loving reading the manga. I still love it. There's a lot of cool moments in the beginning where Toriyama talks about his like life with like his kid and his dog and like losing his eyesight, which is pretty cool. Reading that in the beginning of every volume is pretty nice, and I'm excited to see where the rest of Dragon Ball goes for Dragon Ball Super. That hiatus is still going on with that and One Piece, so here's hoping that that gets resolved at some point. And I think for books, I'll probably start reading the Great God Pan. That's probably gonna be a thing soon. That's more like I think it's a cosmic horror kind of book. My friends have told me that's pretty cool, like Lovecraft kind of stuff. So I'm excited. And oh, I watched the Walking Dead finale for The Ones Who Live, and that was very mid. I was kind of expecting a little more just because of the build up, but it just kind of ends in like single person fights and whatever. It was mid. It wasn't all that exciting and stuff. But that wasn't what I was expecting for. I just kind of wanted to see if Rick even made it back home, and you know what he does. He does make it back home, and that's really nice, to see. I think it's good to see that the Walking Dead show finally got its ending, which is pretty great. Aqua Teen season 12, the newest one. I watched all 5 episodes of that. Also pretty cool. I kind of wish that the jokes were somewhat a little more like original, or a little less parody to some regard. The Aqua Teen always had like some really cool like original moments, but obviously you can't really do a lot of old Aqua Teen stuff. But I like Aqua Teen, and that's just really what I was hoping for seeing the newest stuff. But it was all pretty great. The animation's pretty solid. Aqua Teen's still pretty fun, and that's really just about it for what I really want to talk about for the podcast. There's not a whole lot else. This weekly schedule has been working out pretty well for posting, so I'm going to try and stick with that. It's a lot easier, not during holiday seasons or when I have a hectic work schedule at the time. So it's pretty nice, and I'm going to try and stick with that for coming through the summer, and we'll see how the winter months go. But we got some video games coming out. I'm looking forward to Final Fantasy 16's DLC. I think it's called The Rising Tide. The gameplay for that game is really fun. The story I think is hit or miss for a lot of people. I think the story's pretty nice, but I'm looking forward to that. And Black Myth Wukong, that's also pretty cool. I think it's like a little Souls-like, Team Ninja-like game. I'm not really certain, but I'm super excited. And that's pretty much about it for upcoming games. Sandland, I'm gonna try and get coming out this month, April, and then we got the Elden Ring DLC, the big one. That's gonna be a big hit for a lot of people, and I'm excited to play. See what they're gonna do. I hope they don't reuse bosses. They do that in some of the DLCs I know, like from Software, and I don't know. I don't think I want to see a old boss from Elden Ring, because they even repeated bosses in that game, and that was just kind of like, it was all right. It happens, but maybe not for a DLC I'm paying extra for. Maybe don't do another boss, but that's about it. Hope to talk to you guys about Chrono Trigger next week, and the Great God Pan. You guys stay safe out there. Enjoy your spring. Go out, garden, do something. I plan on doing that if it gets a little warmer and stops raining so often. So yeah, like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what games or books I should talk about in the future. I got a lot of free time coming up in the summer, so give me whatever you got. Thank you, and see you next time.